All right, welcome to 13 Rules Overtime. It's time to continue to talk basketball during the NBA offseason. I'm Jose Salviati, editor at thepeachbasket.net. He's Steve Purciello, longtime educator, vice principal, and athletic director. And this is the 13 Rules Overtime podcast. This is the show where we discuss NBA stars from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We talk about what made them special, what player most resembles that player today, what's Steve's greatest memory about that player. Generally, we want to introduce you to players you probably heard of as an NBA fan, but you didn't get a chance to watch him play. Steve got to watch Rick Barry play. I got to watch him play a little bit at the end of his career, so I'll be able to add a little bit, at least my few thoughts that I had on him. But very, very excited to hear your thoughts on a great player who had, I think the number one thing people remember him for is the free throw, but, which we'll certainly talk about. But he was more than that, right? He was a NBA champion, an ABA champion, an NBA Finals MVP, an 8-time NBA All-Star. We're talking about Rick Barry. All right, so let's start with Steve, like we always do with these shows. Tell us about Rick Barry. What made him special? What was his game? What made him special out on the court?
He can score. I think he's the all-time ABA leading scorer, the postseason. I think he's the all-time postseason ABA scorer. He won 2 titles, as you said, one in the NBA, one in the ABA. Only 4 people have done that. One of them is Dr. J. But so in exclusive company, he won a title with the Oakland Oaks in the ABA. And an interesting trivia question to that, his coach was Alex Hannum, who won a title in both leagues. He won it with Philadelphia in the 67 season, when they stopped Boston's eight-year run. But he played for Oakland, then he played for the I guess it was the Bullets, Washington Bullets back then in 75. What's interesting on that is if you look it up, he averaged well over 20 points a game, but the rest of his team was about 4. I think the next top scorer was either Jamal Wilkes or Butch Beard at 14 points. And they swept the Bullets out. The Bullets had a couple of guys you might have heard of: Wes Unseld, Elvin Hayes, Phil Chenier. So, it's a tremendous upset. If I remember correctly, they were considered no chance to win that playoff series. And they wind up sweeping them, I guess, momentum, and they just got on a roll at the time. So it was another incredible thing. I said when he led the NCAA, NBA, ABA in scoring. So there's so many different things. As I said, he him and 4 guys made won the titles. My memory is I remember, I guess it would be 72. I kind of loved the Nets, and they had this coach you might have heard of, Lou Carnesecca, who was in between going back to St. John's. But and I'd watched them on local TV. It was on Channel 9 back in Jersey. And the Nets, they had this guard I just fell in love with from South Carolina, John Roach. I thought he was great. But Barry was on that team. They went to the finals in the ABA that year, and they lost in the finals, I believe, to Denver in 6. But between them two, they were just incredible. They also had Billy Melchioni, who's another guy who won titles in both leagues. So they were just fun to watch. The thing about Rick Barry, and I think I told you this before, but when I was younger, I played in biddy league and all. We were small, and the foul shot was maybe a foot in from the foul line, so it was 14 feet. And everybody struggled. We were small and struggling to shoot it. So Rick Barry shot the ball from between his legs, underhander.
Yeah.
What you don't see it, you don't never see it again. But everybody, all these smaller players in that league, in biddy league I was in, shot the ball underhand because that was easy. But also we saw Rick Barry do it. That you didn't see a lot of games. You only saw maybe the game of the week and things like that, some of the finals and things. But you didn't see a lot. But when you saw him, you just saw a guy that can score. It was just incredible to watch him. And I remember in the playoffs in 72 where he would just go off in some games and carry the team to wins. And it was like, wow, this is just so much fun to watch. The old ABA fan. There's so many things about him that were incredible, in his career. As I said, the 2 titles are just, you know, it's it's really fascinating with the Oakland Oaks. But what really stunned me about the second title was the fact that he was scoring a lot of points, nobody over 14 points a game outside of him on that team. Think about that. In today's NBA, you got to have at least 2 or 3 guys that are near 20 do that. And he just carried his team.
Now, I've heard you talk about the ABA a lot, and you always throw in the word fun, right? It was fun basketball to watch, and having I'm an '80s Lakers guy, and to me that was the epitome of fun professional basketball, right? Magic Johnson, Showtime, that was fun basketball. Then you kind of transition to '90s and 2000s. You got Shaq and Kobe, which was winning basketball, but it wasn't fun to watch. I mean, admittedly, it really was not very fun to watch. It was poor, pounded out, the occasional dunk, but getting raised on Magic Johnson's passes and Kareem's hook and just the magic of, not the Magic Johnson, but the magic of that style of play. I got to know, that's my fun basketball. What made the ABA fun?
Well, before we do, I just want to remind you, my favorite year in the 80s was 84. I believe Boston beat the Lakers in 7 that year. But going back to the ABA, they used a red, white, and blue ball, which was fun because if you see it rotate, it was just fun to watch it. But also, the NBA didn't come into with the 3 until 80 or 81. The ABA had the 3.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was fun to watch. Plus, the ABA had a lot of guys that were offbeat. And I'm thinking of Marvin Barnes right away. But
yeah, Marvin Barnes took off beat a little too far, didn't he?
He did, but personalities, I think the NBA, the 70s in the NBA were really a time where the NBA was down. People were down on it. That was a time when it was, look, you had to have at least, or you could only have a couple black players on a team. And they were really, it was a bad time in the NBA. And it wasn't nearly what it is today. So, and the ABA was just more wildly, sort of like if you want to compare the AFL and the NFL back in their time in the 60s. The AFL was fun. They threw the ball all over the field. And the ABA was fun. They shot threes. They ran. It was a different game. You hit on something before. The NBA at the time was more or less a half-court game. And then it wasn't great fun to watch. Where the ABA, it was just wide open basketball.
Yeah. You mentioned, and I'm only going to bring it up because you did. You mentioned 1984. I'm just taking a look. There was 1985, 1987, 1988, and 1989. Well, those were years that Boston didn't win at all.
I kind of was not following basketball those years, so no, that's good. I'm glad.
They won quite a few in the '80s. That was my fun basketball. But I definitely get it. I hear stories about the ABA, the multicolored ball, and the fact that they were willing to experiment. Right, the 3-point line. I thought originated there. It didn't, but at least they had it. What made Rick Barry, kind of getting back to the topic? What made him special in the NBA and in the NBA? He didn't change.
No, he could just score. He just had an incredible knack to score. The other thing too that was interesting about him, and he did it on the court. He wasn't happy with mediocrity, and you could see some of the things, and I know he wasn't well loved among the NBA and people because of that. But he was just an intense foreign player. And by the way, 3 or 4 of his kids, I think, played in the NBA. That's right.
Right.
And it tells you a little bit about, the gene pool, I guess, lack of a better way to put it. Just his number 24 was retired by the Warriors, by Miami, the University of Miami, where he went. So, he was this great guy that a lot of people don't know a lot about, and did a lot of tremendous things. And I think he did the NBA games. He did do the NBA games on TV. He was one of the early color men on those games. I believe he worked for TNT also doing games going back. So he was, he was this person that was everywhere back then, and just, just great to watch. I mean, I keep going back to that 72 net team. What fun. What pure fun. They had Billy Melchione on that team, as well as the Whopper, Pulse, who played for them, St. John's, tie in with Carter Second. But they were just fun to watch with John Roach. And it was just, at the time, and the Knicks were still good. If I remember correctly, in the New York area, the Nets were the story. Well, because of it was just fun. It was just, I can't say it another way, but you look forward to watching the playoff games.
Right, right. Well, this is my favorite part of this particular conversation, because it's hard for me to envision a player I never saw play. So I got to ask you, Rick Barry, he sounds like a bucket, right? He sounds like a guy who's a winner, a dog, somebody who's going to go out there and take and make the big shot. Who most resembles that style of play? If you had to put it on somebody playing today.
It's a good question. It's a tough answer. I'm going to say, in a lot of ways, have the move with George Gervin, who could score, just a great scorer.
Yeah.
Different in the way they scored, but they both were great scorers. He would probably be, I'd have to think deep about somebody else who just was a scorer.
Bernard King, Adrian Dantley.
Bernard King was more of a post-up guy that would turn around and had that little turnaround that was unstoppable. Dantley, for 6'4", was tough in the post. And he could do things in the post where Barry didn't necessarily go there.
So Barry was more of a mid-range guy, even though he was tall.
After the basket, he could just do. And the thing is, don't foul him, because he'll kill you on the foul line.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. So I'm trying to figure. I mean, I'm trying to put somebody in today's game. How about Kevin Garnett? Is that close?
That was more. Kevin Garnett was. Don't forget the defensive player of the year.
Right.
Kevin Garnett. I think his value to a team was other things, and Kevin Garnett would be the antithesis. Kevin Garnett was always worried about team success. It's been reputed that Barry wasn't always worried about team success.
Gotcha. Check out that.
I mean, the opposites in a lot of ways. It's hard to even think of anybody that would score. Great scorer.
That one, Karl Anthony Towns.
I don't want to.
You don't want to disparage Cat. I get that.
No,
right?
Yeah. That would be the nice way to put it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, a Cat, I think of a scorer who did, he may not, you question whether he plays for the stats or plays for the team.
Well, that wasn't as good as, there's not even a comparison between the two. And again, and I said it before, to understand how great he was, think about a team that wins the playoffs finals 4-0. And this guy on that team averaged a lot of points, well over 20, 25, 30. I don't know exactly. The next player on this team had 14. I believe it was either Butch Beard or Jamal Wilkes. Now, Butch Beard was a journeyman type player. That was his prime. He played with a lot of teams in his years. The Knicks, one of them. And, he had a coach as well in college and the pros. But the point being, Butch Beard was not a great player. And that was this when they had Clifford Ray and George Johnson. They played center, and he was either in or out with the two of them. Clifford Ray was a defender. George Johnson could shoot a little, but he wasn't great. So they didn't have a deep, really good team, and they went through it. It was remarkable to watch, and that was Barry's ability to carry a team. I mean, he just carried them as he did a few times with the Oakland and teams like that. So it's very difficult to look at somebody. In modern basketball, you don't find one guy carrying a team like.
Right. Yeah, the game has changed.
I guess in today's game, in different ways of scoring, but Brunson, where he's a one-man show carrying a team.
There you go.
Didn't play the same on the court.
Right. Yeah, yeah, and I think Rick Barry had it, about half a foot on Brunson as well. Rick Barry's free throw shooting, unbelievable. I went down the rabbit hole. He led everyone in free throw percentage 7 times in his career, with a high, listen to this, man, of 94.7. So he shot 95% in the 78-79 season. That means he missed 10 free throws all season long. That's unbelievable. And you talked about his free throw shooting. You talked about looking at it as a kid and emulating it. I got a video I want to show you, but I got to ask, why, when you've got something that's proven, here's a guy who did it his entire career. He shot 95%. This is a proven process. It works. How come nobody has done it since then? How come probably nobody ever will?
Crazy thought. Basketball is a macho type game.
Yeah.
Shooting the ball like that isn't macho. So nobody would want to do that. I know when Shaq was playing, some Barry
Right.
talked
I heard about this. Yeah.
Shaq wouldn't even figure it.
Yeah. And Kareem tried to talk him into a hook, and he said, I don't need no hook. He made a rap song about it.
Well, yeah, and the thing about like guys like Shaq struggle, Will Chamberlain struggle shooting foul shots because what they say is their knees. They can't really bend. And so
Their hands are too big.
well, it was always stiff. Without a lot of guys have big hands that made them. But the point being the bending when you're shooting to get your legs into it. And they said that those guys, big guys, always had trouble with their knees and everything else. And that
Didn't Wilt shoot him underhand for a
yeah,
while?
wow, didn't have success either way.
Really? So it's not proven. It doesn't work for everybody.
Well, I would think, well, if you ever listen to Barry talk, you'll understand he's a perfectionist.
Right.
My sense would be that he worked his ass off trying to become this, this
Right.
patient. You know what? And thinking about that, his personality, I think, would be similar to Jerry West. Not the game, similar meaning in that perfection type mentality.
Great segue to this video. Let's hear Rick Barry talk about his free throw shooting style. And there's a really neat, I don't want to call it a video, but a something great video.
Now we have Rick Barry, the great forward from the Golden State Warriors, guarded by Jamal Wilkes, another great all-star from the Golden State Warriors.
Laker
Now,
great.
Rick, you've just been fouled. Now, what do you do?
Well, Red, first thing I try to do is get a good comfortable position with my feet spread and try to get as relaxed as possible. I think that's a big key to shooting free throws so that you feel completely relaxed. And of course, with my two-handed, underhanded free throw, it's a lot easier, I feel, to get in a relaxed situation. I like to bounce the ball 3 times in that relaxed
Wait a
position.
minute. Why 3 times, not 2, not 4?
I talked to you about this before. That's Ren Auerbach's personality, man. You could tell he was that was a fair question, but I love the way he didn't just ask it. He goes, why not 2? Why not 4? He's a funny guy.
He was a bull in a china shop. He would say and do whatever he wanted. He didn't care who you. He was an interesting man, and he's why there's 18 titles in Boston.
There you go. There you go. Let's watch his free throw and then we'll wrap up.
Well, I haven't doing it 3 times, and I just do it the same way. I hold the ball in exactly the same position on the ball every time, and I think repetition in this game is really a key to
Listen to
success.
this.
It's a repetition or a superstition.
I think it's repetition.
Okay,
the
all right.
same way, time, so it becomes something that is embedded in your mind. So I
All
think
right.
He asked, is it repetition or superstition? That's great. That's a great question.
great balance. My arms hang down, my knees are bent, relax, cock the wrists, follow through.
All right, now this.
That's wild. Did you ever shoot him underhand?
As a kid, yeah, in the bitty leagues that we played in. Everybody did it because he did it when we were kids. So you do it. The thing I keep harping on is there's 2 things I want to make. First point I wanted to make about Rick Barry, he was a little ahead of his time also. He used the ABA to make more money. I believe he had to sit out a year because of contract problem. But anyway, he used the ABA. In other words, he was jumping back and forth. He went from NBA, ABA back because of the money. he was ahead of his time because back then it wasn't free agency. So with that agency, the only chance you have is to go to the other league. And he did it. And that helped him make more money. So if you think about the modern player, he's way, way ahead of his time. And that's something that's also very interesting about him. So, and going back to what you asked, yeah, we all did when we were kids because that's what he did. So we tried to do it. And by the way, that was Red on Round Ball, who back in whatever year it was, he did these little clips during televised NBA games at halftime. And it was great. It was great to watch probably, the best coach ever and probably from the best organization ever. So it was good to see all that.
Probably.
No, I think definitely.
We'll leave it on that note then. That's it. Hope you enjoyed learning about Rick Barry. I did. I love going down the rabbit hole. Hearing about a player who missed 10 free throws all season long is unbelievable. It's mind-boggling. Let us know who you want us to talk about. We've got so many players to choose from. Right now, we've got one on deck that I'm excited about. Join us. But again, we want to hear from you, of course, if you've got somebody that you think you'd like to hear a little bit more about. But next week on 13 Rules Overtime, we're going to discuss the great Pistol Pete Maravich. Really, really excited to talk about Pistol Pete next week. We'll talk then, Steve. Thanks.
Thanks.